Welcome to the MSDW podcast. I'm Jason Gumpert, editor at msdynamicsworld.com. On this episode, we are discussing Azure Managed Services for business systems like ERP and why organizations are looking to this model to modernize older and on-premises applications. This episode is sponsored by Enavate, and my guests, Bill Moore and Chris Lavelle of Enavate, tell me about some of the ways that organizations approach an Azure Managed Services model. Moving critical business applications from on-prem data centers to Azure is not a one-size-fits-all decision, of course. Chris and Bill outline some of the various factors that motivate organizations and the advantages that some of these organizations seek to gain. We also discuss Enavate's journey into developing and adapting their Azure Managed Services capabilities in terms of the technology, delivery methods, and the structure of the offerings. And we discuss some of the longer-term benefits that organizations see as they begin to live with cloud-based solutions, often coming after decades running these systems in-house. All right, well, Bill and Chris, welcome to the podcast. Why don't we start with some introductions? Bill, do you want to go first?
Sure do. My name is Bill Moore, and I am the client executive for our cloud services. So I manage the business relationship between our clients and Enavate.
All right, great. And hey, Chris?
Yeah, so Chris Lavelle, I'm responsible for our cloud business within Enavate, in particular our managed cloud.
Very good. Well, I'm looking forward to really getting into some of the topics today. I wanted to start off with a bit of a generalization. So, Bill, when you have conversations with organizations today about Azure Managed Services, are there any ways you can sort of characterize some of the common needs, some of the common pain points that you're hearing?
Yeah, I think I can. We are having a lot of conversations these days with companies of all sizes and from diverse industries who still have their applications on premises. And as it refers to a cloud conversation, some of them are telling us that they don't want to change their ERP solution. They've spent countless hours learning it, tweaking it to fit their business needs. They're happy with the way it is, but they understand that their IT infrastructure needs regular maintenance, and that interferes with their ability to focus on their core business. Then others are telling us that they're really concerned about security breaches and ransomware. And they're not confident that the systems are properly backed up. They don't really know how or if they could recover from a business interruption caused by an outage. So those are the things that are really driving these managed cloud conversations.
So kind of a range of, I guess, fears, concerns, things that they're perhaps seeing in their businesses today that's leading them to at least consider what options are out there for, a cloud services type of model. On the one side, like you mentioned, is risk-averse organizations. If a company's really risk-averse, what are they really looking for when they're assessing Azure Managed Services?
They're asking us, how can we ensure they aren't a victim of a ransomware attack or a security breach? They want to know how we can ensure that they can recover from a business interruption that's caused by an outage. And they want to know the best approach to minimizing the risk when it comes to management of these systems. And I'll tell you, we can't really guarantee you're not going to be the victim of a ransomware attack, right? But we tell organizations, number one, train your employees. Just tell them not to open up links that they're not familiar with, and don't open emails from people they don't know, et cetera. Our API-driven cloud services improve monitoring, automation, and centralized access control, so that's helpful. We utilize some cloud-native backup services that ensure backups are successful and, more importantly, can be restored. We use some advanced threat detection to identify anomalies and zero-day attacks to help mitigate the risks. And, Microsoft spends over $1 billion annually on security in Azure, and we enhance that with additional tools and processes to ensure the security of our client systems and data. So ultimately, IT security is risk management, and we put the things in place to help mitigate those risks.
Yeah, Bill, that's a good point. Something I would add to that. Often when an organization gets hit with some sort of ransomware, the surprise they get is when they go to their backups and all of a sudden they realize the backups aren't working or their backups are also impacted. And that's another area where we really have a significant impasse on risk aversion is the technologies and mechanisms by which we back up data and have recoverability, have additional layers of protection to ensure that, we have recoverability, even in case of a ransomware attack or something of that nature where a customer might be impacted. So, we've had many customers come to us after it's happened. We found out that their backups weren't what they thought they were, and we've had to help them out of that situation. So another key area is not just the backups, but in how we secure the backups so they don't get impacted if the customer gets impacted in their production environment.
One follow-up on this topic, I know just from watching the partner space and how many vendors work with Microsoft to, I guess, augment, you'd say, either the security element or the backup and preservation of data. Can you talk at all, Chris, maybe about what kind of a mix of capabilities you see sort of native to Microsoft and how far the partner channel has come in sort of offering even more technology? Is that something that customers wonder about?
Yeah, well, it's interesting. I'll answer it in a slightly different way. It's both an opportunity and a challenge for customers because as Microsoft introduces new capabilities, and then as partners build on top of those capabilities, it becomes a challenge for customers to consume it all and understand it and know what makes sense for them and helping them solve a particular technical issue, business challenge, or organizational initiative and how they can leverage it in that. And that's really where we find that we can help our customers is by being the experts in that and understanding the impacts and opportunities as new services and new cloud native capabilities are released from Microsoft and working with Microsoft as a partner to really drive that understanding ahead of its release so that when it is released, we can help our customers understand how they can benefit from it.
All right, excellent. Well, let's kind of turn to the other side of the coin, which would be organizations that, are considering Azure managed services and their risk is not their biggest concern. They're more risk tolerant, let's say. Chris, what are some of the strengths that those kinds of organizations are looking at?
Yeah, so it's interesting. You have a number of customers where if they have a minor impacting event that makes their environment unavailable for an hour or two, it's not that impactful if they're not using it in a distribution, logistics, or other real-time capacity, especially in the ERP realm. In those cases, what we find is there's still a number of items that moving that platform, that business application or ERP application to Azure that helps them as an organization. One is you typically see a significant performance increase because often it's coming off of older hardware, older environment that's gone past its shelf life, so to speak. And so that increased performance has a better user experience and has a increased efficiency for the people using it. We also see some enhanced remote access, right? So the way that it's delivered in access in the cloud allows a customer to access it from any computer system, not just their work laptop or their work system, which gives them a lot more flexibility in how they're accessing that environment and how that environment is managed. When it comes to things like reduced capital outlay, it ties somewhat to the previous item where you may have some performance issues in old hardware. When we move it into Azure, you don't have to refresh that hardware and have that additional capital outlay. You don't have to support that hardware. You don't have to necessarily have expertise in the ERP application in-house, which can be expensive to maintain. All those things come into play. And then, one that's sometimes overlooked is sometimes some of these older legacy ERP platforms, the operating system and SQL versions they're running on can be end of life. And often when it's a Microsoft platform, there are some extended components and extended support available in Azure for certain versions of operating systems and SQL versions that they get additional benefit from. They would not get if they were on-prem.
Once a customer's moved their environment, are there other benefits that they can take advantage of in Azure?
So yes, once a customer has moved their ERP into Azure and that ERP database is inside the Azure cloud, public cloud, you have faster, more direct access to that data. You can export that data into Azure Data Lake or connect it to other Azure native services to take advantage and unlock that data for other purposes. And normally, if you had this on a premise environment, you'd have the data replication challenges, you'd have limited pipeline and connectivity issues for a lot of smaller organizations to have as fast and as frequent access to that data. Once it's moved up into Azure, you then have additional options in how you move that data into other cloud native services that you can benefit from.
Well, Bill, question for you. So how have you seen customers finding more strategic advantages from making this type of transition? We were talking about customers that are considering it, but you've also obviously helped many customers through the process already. I can just imagine if an organization has that complex of an architecture and they're able to know and understand and execute on some of those kinds of disaster recovery processes, that they can really appreciate the value of some of those huge improvements, both in terms of just the time and the improved performance, but also just the level of effort it must have taken to go through 6 hours or more of of that kind of high pressure work in the case of actually needing to execute on it.
One more thought on that. It doesn't have to be a highly complex environment. We have clients that have 3 servers or 3 virtual machines in their environment. But I think Chris had alluded to this earlier. They don't test backups and they certainly don't test restores. And so they have an outage and it could be simple as, a server blows up. The restore is critical. And we've had great success improving that recovery point and recovery time objectives by doing a better job of managing backups and ensuring that restores can happen in a quick and efficient manner.
And when it comes to what you and the Enavate team have really learned and kind of skills you've honed to support these processes, what I wanted to just ask next was if you could talk about maybe some of that journey, maybe some of the skills that your team really has developed, maybe some of the strategic challenges that your team has worked to solve to, make some of these managed service offerings to realize benefits from them. Because it's certainly not, I'm sure from your side, this is not like a turnkey kind of a thing to be able to stand up from your side. This is a really serious combination of capabilities, right?
Yeah, so it's interesting. Enavate, and the team here at Enavate as a whole has been providing ERP solutions for, 12 plus years, if not 15 years in the market. So first and foremost, there is a huge amount of ERP knowledge, a wealth of ERP knowledge and understanding in the Microsoft platform in particular of what it takes for that ERP system to run properly, how it should be structured, how it should be built, where the challenges lie in those environments. So long running history of providing mission critical ERP in the Microsoft space. And that foundation is added to by having managed those environments, in particular ERP and Microsoft Business Application environments for the past 10 plus years in a cloud environment. And so what we have often found is, a customer will have a really good ERP partner, but they're not really good cloud or managed cloud or Azure from a knowledge standpoint. Or they'll have a really good Azure partner, and there's plenty of really good Azure partners, but the Azure partner doesn't have the ERP expertise and knowledge to bring to the table in it. And I think that's part of what we bring that's not found that often is deep expertise on both sides and deep expertise in providing that operational framework, the management systems in support of it, and knowledge to have a mission critical application infrastructure that was built specifically to support ERP from the ground up and run properly. And so when we bring a customer into a managed cloud environment, we're not taking their environment as it sits today. We are bringing it into our well-defined, architected, blueprinted build patterns and practices within Azure. And in doing that, we bring them into a known good state every time and then bring their data in. So that approach, along with the 10 plus years of knowledge and information and exercise of doing that for customers inside the Microsoft ERP space, provides a super reliable, very robust environment that the customer has come to count on.
Hey, Jason, I think it's highly relevant too to understand our history. So the team at Enavate, a large part of the team at Enavate came as a result of a couple acquisitions. Chris and I were both part of that original company. But originally, we were supporting a large number of Microsoft Dynamics applications and not in the cloud business. And those clients would call us with the problem. And sometimes it's a challenge to determine whether it's an application problem, it's a network problem, it's an infrastructure problem, or whatever, right? So you get this finger pointing sort of thing. It's not the application, it's the infrastructure. No, it's not the infrastructure, it's the application. So we made a decision, and it's a very expensive one, to build out a private cloud environment. Again, as Chris mentioned, I think it was about 12 years ago now, to alleviate that problem. And so then became, when a client had a problem, they called us, and we had the solution, whether it was the infrastructure or the application. So fast forward to providing managed services in a hosting environment for 12 plus years, both the application and infrastructure, and all of the things that we've learned as a result of that. In my opinion, at least to my knowledge, it gives us an unparalleled advantage, or almost an unfair advantage over other providers, in that if you have a Dynamics application, a Microsoft Dynamics application, and you want to host it in the cloud, we're the only ones that have been doing it for this long and for this large number of clients.
Maybe before we close out, I just want to get any opinions or views you have that are a bit forward-looking in terms of is there any technology or any, really critical next steps that you think customers, especially Dynamics customers, should be looking at when they are assessing if they're still on-prem, whether, Azure Managed Services is a step that they should take? Are there, particular release? I'm thinking of like releases or perhaps technology cliffs or anything like that are really on your mind, Chris?
So I guess a couple of things come to mind. For GP, we know that GP will, I think the reference that's used is GP 2028. We know through 2028 GP is around and supported, but customers should be planning for end of life for some of these ERP applications. That end of life may be a little bit of a moving target sometimes, but they should always be thinking about it. So in moving your existing, legacy ERP or business application into Azure, you start to take advantage of some of those Azure capabilities as we'd mentioned. And then when it does come time to that it makes sense for you to move off of the platform, often to D365 Business Central or D365 F&O at times. Having a partner that has knowledge on both sides of that fence, has a structured, programmatic approach to helping their customers migrate when they're ready, has tools available to facilitate and streamline that process from migration assessments, having investments in that templatized, structured approach in migrating customers to reduce the cost and speed up their ability to recognize value when they're ready to move. I think that becomes very important. I think that's another place where Enavate has invested a massive amount of time, effort, and money in ensuring that we have, one of the best ways to move customers to Business Central when they are ready.
All right, excellent. Well, Bill Moore, Chris Lavelle, thank you both so much for being here. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Jason. It's been great.
Thank you, Jason.
This has been another episode of the MSDW podcast. My thanks once again to Chris and Bill for joining, and this message from Enavate. If you would like to learn more about the benefits of managed cloud services with the Enavate team and review a total cost of ownership so you can compare the true cost of hosting your Dynamics applications on premises versus in the cloud, visit the links in the show notes to request a call. And that's it for this episode. If you want to get in touch with me, you can send me an email, jgumpert@msdynamicsworld.com. For all of our updates, please do follow us on LinkedIn or on Twitter. Until next time, this is MS Dynamics World, signing off.